Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha. Jaya Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva. Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa and Parivrajacharya, Astotra Satat Sissiman, the Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Maharaj ki Jai. His confounded Chaya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa and Parivrajacharya, Astotra Satat Sissiman, the Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Maharaj ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavina ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem Si Kahao Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Si Advaita Gadadhar Si Vasadi Si Gora Bhaktavinda ki Jai. Si Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Girigavardhan ki Jai. Si Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Si Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki Jai. Si Jagannapura Dham ki Jai. Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai ki Jai. Simata Tulsi Devi Bhakta Devi ki Jai. Samveda Bhakta Vinda ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glory is to the sum of devotees. All glory is to the sum of devotees. All glory is to the sum of devotees. All glories to Sisi Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Gyana Timirandasya, Gyana Jana Salakaya, Saksur Militam Jena Tismaya, Si Gurave Namaha, Suchetayam Nobistam, Stafitam Jena Bhutale, Swayam Rupam Kadamayam, Dadati Swa Padantika, Vanchakalpatari Byacha, Kripasunabhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanabhyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Itinamani Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravana Pacharana Nivisesa Sonya Vada Pasatya Dasatarana Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadara Rasivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, you're welcome to this morning morning class right here in Mayapur. Today we are not having the regular Bhagavatam class. We are honoring the disappearance of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the spiritual master of the founder child of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we'll discuss some things about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So when there is, Lord Krishna had mentioned in the Gita that when there is discrepancies in the execution of religious principles and a predominant rise in irreligion, at that time he descends himself. But besides Krishna coming himself, he also allows some of his servants or some of his representatives to come and trash out some issues. A typical case in the case is the advent of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. Bhakti Siddhanta was basically invoked by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, his father, at a time that there were so many discrepancies in the Lord Chaitanya's teachings, Lord Chaitanya's legacy, and his tradition altogether. When Lord Chaitanya and his entourage left the planet, after about 200 to 250 years, these there was a predominance of upper sampradayas. People who were posing to be representatives of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but using that as a means of fostering their own personal, social, economic, political agendas. To the point that even the basic pillars of the tradition was completely turned topsy-turvy, upside down. For instance, I was just listening to Bhakti Swami's talk on this, and he was mentioning how even the four regulative principles, he came to a point that people won't follow. And not just won't follow, but will advocate the opposite. There was no such predominance of meat eating, but fish eating. There was some type of advocacy for it. So those were the type of things that were going on when Bhaktivinoda appeared. And as he was growing up, he was trying to even get Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he couldn't get. It took him just a long time to be able to procure a copy. So, when he was the manager or in charge of the Puri temple, at the same time, the district magistrate in Puri, he tried by all means to see that he integrates the mission of the Lord into his official duty. But integration is very challenging. For those who do things like calculus or addition of mathematics, you know integration, even mathematically speaking, is very difficult. So to integrate championing a religious cause and a heavy duty judicial responsibility, it's almost incompatible. So when he found out he couldn't really do it to the satisfaction of his heart and to the pleasure of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he started praying. He was praying to Lord Jagannath to help him with at least a ray of Vishnu. He doesn't want the whole moon, just a ray of Vishnu to be able to come to facilitate this spiritual transformative change. And that is how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Bimal Prasad was invoked into the family of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. At that time he was in Odisha, in Puri, and he lived just by the road from Jagannath Puri temple to Gundisha. So he got this child and he named him Bimal Prasad. And the whole idea is that, you see, he was such a highly elevated soul, an acharya, but he didn't just claim directly that this is Krishna Prasad or this is Jagannath Prasad. He said it's Bimala Prasad. You know why he said that? Why he gave that type of name? Because in Puri, the prasad that is offered is distributed by Mahamaya. And so everything else has to go through Mahamaya after Jagannath has eaten. And so he felt this child is the mercy of Bimal, is the mercy of Mahamaya. Bimal is another name for Durga or Mahamaya. And that is his humility. A genuine devotee, authentic devotee, does not claim that he is very close to Krishna. Like the Shastra mentions, Chaitanya Charitamrita mentioned, one has to be in the mood of dasa, dasa, anudasa. So, the child was born to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhagavati Devi. And when the child was born, there was something pleasantly strange. The umbilical cord of the child was wrapped around his neck like a Brahmin thread. And so this was one of the signs that the astrologers who came to do the astrological chart reading of this child used in understanding the exalted position of the child. Another thing that showed the exceptional qualities or exalted position or Mahapurusa of Bhakti Siddhanta was that his hands extend to his knees. If anybody stands up, their hands don't extend to their knees. But his hands extended to his knees. So this child was in response to Bhaktivinoda's fervent prayers to the Lord to send someone to help in creating the positive spiritual change that was badly needed at that time. Because then, Indian elites were not interested in the mission of Lord Chaitanya because they saw all of these charlatans who were masquerading as devotees of Lord Chaitanya and teaching different, completely irreligion for the satisfaction or to suit their own purposes. And so Bhaktivinoda felt there was a need for a transformative change. And so his prayers, the Lord answered his prayers and sent Bhakti Siddhanta. So today we are celebrating his disappearance. And that celebration basically entails glorifications of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, his accomplishments. And of course, we'll be fasting till noon. Now the disappearance of this Acharya is not like the birthday or the appearance or disappearance, the birthday and death of we conditioned souls. The Acharya appears and disappears. He becomes manifest, and then after some time he winds up his lila, he becomes unmanifest. So, He was born on February 6, 1874, and just in June, Ratha Yatra, or Puri Ratha Yatra, Jagannath Puri Ratha Yatra was conducted. And when this cart came to the front of Bhakti Vinod's house, it got stuck there for 3 days. For 3 days. So, Bhakti Vinod felt, let's take advantage. The Lord is here. Let's go make some prayers, prayers for the child, on behalf of the child, to the Lord. So the child was taken to have a darshan of Jagannath, was kept at the feet of Jagannath. And one of the flowers, one of the garlands of Lord Jagannath fell, dipped on the child. Again, another sign that this is a special soul. So that was when he was how many months? 4 months. February, March, April, May, June. About 4 months. So the child was groomed in a very devotionally oriented atmosphere. And Bhakti Vinod took time to be able to nurture his child, the jewel, the person that he honestly begged to be able to begged Vishnu, begged Lord Jagannath to be able to help him in the transition of the ongoing misdemeanors, or spiritual misdemeanors. So, he cultured him in devotional values. And when he was a mere child, he had a desire to eat a mango. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, like mildly chastised him that everything, the fruits have to be offered to the Lord before we take it. And because of that mild, a chastisement, Bimal vowed never to eat mango for the rest of his life. He was that determined. There was that pinpointed determination. If one is not determined, it is very difficult to make advancement in spiritual life. And keep in mind that Bimal himself, or Bhakti Siddhanta himself, is coming from the spiritual world. And it is mentioned that in Goloka, he is Nayana Mani Manjari, whereas the father is Kamala Manjari. So we have, one Manjari invoking another Manjari to come and help him, fostering the message of Godhead, pushing on the message of Godhead. And during the Krishna pastimes, in Vrindavan, Nayana Manjari was actually born in Yawat, and that is the village where Abhimanyu lived, where Radha, and her so-called husband Abhimanyu also lived. So she was very much a right-wing personality. In other words, assisting Radharani. So you find that from the beginning of his advent, he had a special message to be able to deliver, because he was invoked by his father to come and help in deliberating on how to be able to spread the message of Godhead, and that was his main objective. In fact, at a very tender age, I think 7 years or so, he already had memorized all of the Bhagavad Gita. And then when he was 16 years, he had formed an organization or society where all of his friends, all of the members of that society would take a vow to be celibate for their whole life, to be monastic, brahmacharis for their whole life. That was not in the temple, it's just an organization he formed. But eventually, it was only Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati who was the one who formed that society and who was the one who remained a Nastic Brahmachari. Everyone else who was attracted to the whole idea and to that organization couldn't sustain it. So even as a mere teenager, he had all these lofty ideas. And Bhaktivinoda, when he was trying to build his house, when they were digging the foundation, they found a deity of Kuma. And he entrusted that also into the care of Bhakti Siddhanta for worship. So from his very teenage age, he had all of these wonderful arrangements, auspicious opportunities, and being born by an acharya. And so it came to a time when he felt he needed some spiritual guidance. So he had asked his father about who to take initiation from. And his father said he should go to meet Gorakishore Das Babaji. And these are completely opposite polarities. Gorakishore Das Babaji was illiterate. Bhakti Siddhanta was a very highly reputed scholar. And so when he went to meet Gorakishore Das Babaji, he initially declined, tactfully. First he said he will speak with the Lord and see if this is something that he could do. And then when he went back to him, he said, "Oh, I forgot." So he said, "Come again," after a couple of days. So again he went, again something transpired. And Bhakti Siddhanta basically understood that he was testing him, and he was very determined to be able to get his association or get his mercy. So sometimes to have the mercy of the spiritual master could be very challenging. And if one is not determined, one may even give up. I know of cases of some devotees in ISKCON who wait to get initiation from their spiritual master for 10 years, for 8 years, for 7 years. So, in the case of Bhakti Siddhanta, the Guru was trying to see how determined Bhakti Siddhanta was. But he knew also that this is a pure soul, but he was feeling unqualified to be his Guru. Look at the situation. He was was such an exalted soul, but still he was feeling unqualified. He didn't want to. He was not pursuing followership. So, the third time Bhakti Siddhanta had to go to him before he eventually subscribed to the idea of accepting him as his disciple. But that was just one disciple for life. He had only Bhakti Siddhanta as his disciple. See, he's on a Guru Parampara, but he had only one Bhakti Siddhanta as his disciple. So, when time passed by, Bhaktivinoda took Bhakti Siddhanta for pilgrimage to be able to arouse or invoke more of his intensity for devotional culture. Of course, when he was in school, he was not interested in the regular academic books, but he will always have the best grade. It doesn't mean that we should not encourage our children to read. This is an acharya. This is someone coming from the spiritual world, so we cannot imitate. And at a very tender age, again, he mastered astronomy, astrology, mathematics, to the point that he was asked to do a calendar which will include Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance and, other personalities. So he was recognized not only in the spiritual purity, but even metaphysical and material knowledge, he was recognized. When he was in college, he spent 2 years in college and dropped out. His idea was that If he goes through the whole system, he will come out to get, a big position, and he'll be encouraged. He'll be pushed to follow the normal life cycle, the normal rat race in the world. So because of that, he just dropped out from school, from college. But again, it doesn't mean we should not imitate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and say, you heard that there? During the disappearance lecture, Bhakti Siddhanta dropped out from college. Why don't you drop out from college too? We're not Bhakti Siddhanta. He came from the spiritual world. It's so easy to imitate the acharyas. But we have to aspire to follow in the footsteps, the examples that they've set for us. And it is important to mention that before he started his mission, he went on a pilgrimage himself to South India. But when he came back, he took a vow to chant 1 billion names of Krishna. And each day, he would chant daily, he would chant like what Haridas Thakur did. How many rounds Haridas Thakur chanted each day? Huh? Yeah. So those who want to do big things, great things, this is a good example. So it's a good example to follow to be able to prepare for your future. It's not easy, right? Even 16 rounds is difficult for us to chant. But then there are these high standard examples, so that we don't say, well, this person is not doing this, so I will also not do it. Our acharyas, they've set a very high standard for us. And all of these teachings are meant to motivate us, meant to encourage us to become steadfast on the path of bhakti. Because if we don't have this type of inspirational, this type of motivating examples that have been set down, we don't have this type of legacy, it's so easy to, feel complacent. And even these legacies are there, but still we feel complacent. So, he started his preaching after doing that, taking up that vow for about 10 years or so. Executing that vow for about 10 years. He established 64 temples or mass, and one of them was in Burma. 63 were in India and one was in Burma. So he helped to establish Krishna consciousness like we never can think of. And it's just a single person. I remember one of the literatures that he wrote was on community development, principles of community development. And in that I don't know whether I'm getting the title correctly, but yes, it's about community development. Over 30 principles that he laid out in that book. And that book was commented upon by Bhakti Siddhanta Swami. So, our community, Bhakti Siddhanta has already set down the protocols, how to go about to govern spiritual communities. Not only spiritual communities, even material communities. And one of the major things he mentioned is that when we are Krishna conscious, then the community, there is a good solidarity, a good comradeship, and keeping Krishna at the center of all that we do helps to be able to create that recognition for everyone. I remember in one of his temples, one specific situation where he had traveled and then he came to that mat. He didn't see one brahmachari. So he asked the temple president, where is this brahmachari? And he said, oh, he blooped. And Bhakti Siddhanta told him, what did you do to make sure he didn't blow? So eventually he ordered him to go and look for him and bring him back. That was how caring this lion guru. He's a lion guru, but look at also how caring. He does not only speak to defeat people. Look at how caring he was in his own community of devotees. He told the president, go and look for him and bring him back. He blooped because you were not lovingly disposed to him. He was afraid. He did something wrong. He was afraid, so he blooped. Yeah. So he set a very high standard, even in terms of temple management. He was an epitome of Yukta Vairagya, using everything for Krishna. He appeared at a time that a sadhu was expected to walk by foot. But he used motor cars. He appeared at a time that sadhus do not wear kutas that were sewn with machines. But he made his sannyasis wear tailored kutas, shirts. So he was like a rule breaker. he broke the tradition, the so-called tradition that was so much restrictive and not concentrating on spreading the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He preached to different calibers of people, and depending on the type of people that he has to preach to, he has to dress in a particular way. So, yes, he's a very exceptional, powerful Lion Guru. Is not only a scholar, but a practitioner of what he advocated or what he preached. So today, we can reflect on his wonderful accomplishments and pray to him to bless us with his mercy, with his sidelong, to cast his sidelong glance on us, to help sustain our devotional culture. So this is a powerful system. People who had established the teachings of the Lord, or re-established the teachings of the Lord, they are not common people. So from his father to him, they are all from the spiritual world. Kamala Manjari, Bhakti Siddhanta, Nayana, Mani Manjari. So if we can take, you see, the idea is when we know the importance of people, their background, it invokes more faith from us in those people. Because we don't see them like, any other common person that we may meet on the road. So we should take time to make some prayers today, and for those who are lucky to be around, we should also try to fast till 12. Any comments or prayers?
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the class. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's chopping technique. How do we? Many devotees get into this, heavy type of preaching. In the long run, whether it is beneficial for our society or we have simply trampled on somebody's spiritual life. So how do we kind of relate to that particular aspect of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta?
Next question. Not even only Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada. One elderly brahmachari here, he's late now, tall, huge. He told me his story when I came to India for the first time in 2008. He told me his story. He was a Mayavadi sannyasi. That brahmachari, he was a Mayavadi sannyasi. He met Prabhupada. He challenged Prabhupada. And Prabhupada defeated him. So he became Prabhupada's follower. Now, when we preach to people like what you're mentioning, when we preach to people and we just heavy on them, what is our mindset? Do we defeat them and they follow us? You see, their emotional courage is different. In most cases, we just do it for selfish purpose. We want to demonstrate to the person that, I know better than you. I beat you. So even Prabhupada, he was completely in a compassionate mood. So he could talk with somebody, the person becomes defeated, and then he says, I'll be a disciple. This is not hearsay. The brahmachari, he was living here. He's late now. He was over 80 years before he died. He told me this. So yeah, Bhakti Siddhanta, yeah, we may say, oh, he was heavy. Yeah, I remember when he was a young boy, the Bhakti Vinod had some invitation to speak somewhere, and he was a little bit indisposed. He was ill, so he told Bhakti Siddhanta to go and represent him. He went there and wipe out the whole people. He defeated them woefully. But look at his case. What is his mindset? Otherwise, how could he ask his temple president, you go and look for this boy and bring him back? You were not loving and caring towards him. So these acharyas, they have that loving emotion. And if someone loves you dearly, whatever they tell you, you take it with good faith. If someone is relating with you on an official basis, if they tell you anything, you take it wrongly. Because you realize, no, there is no love. He's just ordering me. So that loving connection is there between the acharya and the jiva. And so if even he chastises the jiva still, that helps to deepen his connection with the acharya. We don't have that type of zeal. And so we should think of a more practical way. We should not, that's what I mentioned, we should not imitate the acharyas. I like to be friendly with people instead of trying to defeat them. I mean, I remember when I was going to a conference, I was in the night, so I was in a bus, and one gentleman is a Christian, so he was going to some place for his missionary work, and he saw me on duty, and then he came there to start preaching to me, and I knew that he would not listen to me, so I just told him, please, sir, I'm feeling sleepy. Can you look for somebody else to preach to? Because when you go into wranglings, nobody gains anything. And therefore, yeah, it's a very important point to raise. We should not take this hard stand on people. We should rather be friendly. I remember when I was still in Africa, there was one gentleman, he was a big writer. He published some article in the newspaper. But then some of the things he said were wrong. And so I wrote a rejoinder to that article. And at the beginning, I mentioned that I don't intend to hurt you, I don't intend to offend you, but there are some misgivings in this paper, and it may mislead the masses. So as a practitioner for this number of years, this is my reference from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Bhagavad Purana. This is what this very statement you made indicates. And so when I mentioned all of that, and then at the end also, I said, please forgive me if you feel offended. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know what? That guy, after reading the rejoinder, he came to the temple. So when they said, so one devotee came to call me and said that, just as such a person is looking for you. I said, hey, I'm in trouble. This is the guy who wrote something. This is the guy who wrote something in the newspaper, and then I wrote a rejoinder. But I was wrong. I went to him and he said, you are the Vasudeva? Oh, I want to be part of you guys. You see, you made so many solid points there, but You presented it very objectively without trying to victimize me. That is why I wanted to come and see the person physically. It was through that that guy became a devotee. So, we need to understand that the mission, we don't carry the same energy. We don't carry the same loving energy like Prabhupada, like Bhakti Siddhanta. We're not coming from the same realms. We should be mindful about what we say when we are even preaching to people, when we are talking to people. Because it may cause some type of disruption instead of creating attraction to the movement. So we should adopt practical procedures to be able to create a friendly, oriented environment when preaching to people. Yeah. The time is past 9. Okay, you wanted to ask a question? Yes. Sorry, normally I don't even allow a minute to pass 9 because, yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the wonderful class. Maharaj, it seems from the example of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that services like preaching, management are to be done with a purity, a lot of inner intentions have to be cleared. Then only one can do it constructively and with sustainability. Often when I have seen in my life, when in my case and other devotees' case, when devotees do this service in our movement, they gradually tend to compromise the principles of purity, personal cultivation of Krishna consciousness, and then they end up either committing offenses or they lose the taste for the hearing chanting gradually. So from your experience, what light would you like to throw upon balancing between the personal cultivation of Krishna consciousness, which is also service to the Srila Prabhupada, and preaching and management, which is also service to Srila Prabhupada? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, again, there is a need for integration there, proper integration, and that proper integration comes with effective time management. If I've seen cases where devotees effectively manage their time, and although they are having heavy duty sadhana and heavy duty service, they are able to prevail, they are able to pass through the odds, the challenges. Now, antithetically, or the reverse is the case, when I've also seen, I've served in a number of places, even when I was younger, and I've seen particularly some pujaris in the temple where I have served, even in the US. These boys, they're very busy, very, very, very busy, especially on festive occasions. And busy to the point that they can't chant their rounds. And the managers also don't ask them whether they are able to chant their rounds. But I'm close with them as a friend, so I used to, ask them. And then they complain that, too much of service. But the point is, the services we are doing is to help us to chant better. The services we are doing is to help us to chant better. So if we say, for instance, I'm a pujari, or I'm doing this service, I'm doing Sankirtan, and I don't have the time to chant, we are looking for trouble. So there should be effective time management. That is the watchword. If we effectively manage our 24 hours, we can do so many things beyond our imagination. So The strategy is using effective time management as the springboard to be able to do the integration of sadhana and our services. It's challenging, but we have to practice. Sometimes people don't mention about time management, but even that, I only had and studied time management when I was doing some graduate program. And that was because also I was doing management. So it's not something that everybody talks about. And that's why there is a lot of problems. There's no awareness about time management being the fundamental in integrating our sadhana and our services. It's a nice point you raise. All right, so we'll end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai.